Notice I point out very clearly that the core policymakers, as I've already indicated, didn't expect or understand this. On the contrary, the very possibility of a Great Depression type scenario in the financial sector didn't appear in any of the conventional economic policymakers' frame of reference or in the economists who were advising them. Even the most skeptical. It's probably the people who came closest among the academics were Carmen Reinhardt and Ken Rogoff in their book, This Time is Different. I wonder whether, obviously they don't foresee this, whether they expected such a total meltdown. So that forces us to confront the question, well, why were we so wrong? Analytically, why did we rule out this very possibility, and what drove this? So in addressing that question, I tried to look at this in the way, perhaps largely in the way of the one economist who I think basically got this sort of story right, who had been largely ignored, and that economist was Hyman Minsky, who had been largely ignored by conventional economics because he didn't believe that the market economy was fundamentally stable. On the contrary, he believed it tended to generate its own instability. And the most penetrating notion he has, which really informed much of this book, is a wonderful, very simple sentence: stability destabilizes. So far from a great moderation indicating that everything is going to go on forever in a very moderate way. When everybody thinks there's a great moderation, you should really be terrified. Because we as human beings, and particularly we as human beings operating through financial markets, will create risk in this situation. And there's a very simple way, which is again central to his analysis, of how we create risk in this situation. If you are in a world which is seen as moderate, stable, and so forth, then you will want to take on risks. And there are two different ways of taking on risk in the economy. Really productive ways, like starting new businesses, being a true entrepreneur, and you'll get some of that, and it's why a lot of booms go with innovation, okay? And the other way, it's the good old-fashioned way, which he discusses, is leverage. You know, you just leverage yourself up in that sort of world, and we leveraged ourselves up in the years up to the crisis in terms of ourselves as households. That was quite a new thing. It wasn't mostly non-financial corporates, so they played some role. It was overwhelmingly households. And in terms of the financial sector itself, the balance sheets of the financial sector in scale, which of course is largely a counterpart of what was going on in the rest of the economy, and the complexity of the financial sector, but also the leverage within it. So to give you a very simple idea, the major banks of the world roughly doubled their leverage in the 4 or 5 years running up to the crisis. They varied in the individuals, but it became quite normal for the major banks of the Western world to be operating with leverage in the 40 to 50 to 1 range, which to all intents and purposes meant that they didn't have any capital at all. Their capacity to bear losses was almost zero.